Welcome to Sons of God 24/7 Ministries, and I'm Roxy. I guess you figured out by now, I'm definitely not a pro at this. I'm just trying to reveal my heart to you. I'm going to call this one, Was I Born Like This? And the answer to that is yes. So today I'm trying to address some of the reasons that people don't receive the Lord. And it actually comes back again to the lack of knowledge of God, His ways, the Word, His Spirit, and what might cause, because of the things that happen to us in our life, and even after we're saved, but particularly before we're born again, we're a wide open field to the enemy. And the things that can cause people to backslide and say, well, where's God at? And where was He at when this happened? The same place He was when Jesus died on the cross. And so other people's lawlessness does affect our lives. And I myself allowed, because of the years, and you may pass some tests, and I did, and I'm sure you have too, that absolutely glorified the Lord, and you were pleased with Him yourself, and so was He. But sometimes, because of the consistency of it. We've heard the story of the frog in the water, and you can place a frog in cold water, turn the heat up, and let him stay there. He'll stay there till he dies. But if you put the hot water and drop the frog in there, he'll hop out. So just the gnawing of everyday lawlessness in our lives takes a toll on us. And so the way we handle other people's lawlessness, and so I'm going to be sharing different ways, because I know that I'm not the only one that's went through some of the things that I've been through. And so one of the things, of course, is you would just literally give your life for your children, and you do. You do without things, and anything that is available to get, your kids get. And then we have actually a judgment against our parents, which is not right. And we always want to give our generation the things that we didn't get. And to tell you the truth, our generation needed the same things, I can say, that I got. Now, I know there's some that they didn't get the right things, but what Mom and Dad did give us is what we needed to get. And but because of our lack of knowledge then, and we wasn't born again when we started having our children, some of us wasn't, not everybody, but then we didn't know how to train our children, and they've told us that between the ages of birth and 4 to at least 5, your training time is basically over. They've got the inheritance from you. Actually, the Word tells us to 10 generations back from you and their dad, and nobody was born perfect, neither was I, neither was their dad, so they inherited all of that, and we didn't know how to take care of it. Well, my life at the time then I'm going to share one example today, because I think what the Lord told me in it is worth telling you. Because I know that there's mothers, I see it on the internet, and I laugh and say I really probably shouldn't repeat it, but particularly when your kids get in their teen years and they know more than you do, and they're making their own mind up what's good and what's evil, and there's a lot of havoc in the home and with each other, even in the home. And so anyway, one day I was at a craft shop, and I saw this plaque that said, "Raising kids is like being pecked to death by a duck." And that's not the way it should be. But like I said there again, I wasn't born again. The twins were about 14, maybe close to 15. Well, actually over 14, yeah, when I got born again. Well, then I didn't know anything how to raise children. I can remember wishing there was an older woman who would teach me things of how to raise children and how to deal with their lawlessness in a proper way, and everything. Of course, the Word does teach that, but my mother had not taught us. We weren't spanked. And so that was another mistake Mom made, but they lived the life, and I've said it this way, and because they lived the life, we knew what to do. We didn't have to have 16 hours of counseling to get us straightened out, but there's a lot of things we didn't learn as well. Okay, so anyway, I want to share with you the first Mother's Day. as I'd shared in the Born Again series, I was water baptized, and after that then was filled in the Spirit. And so that took about 3 weeks from the time that I'd had the encounter with the Lord. And so Mother's Day would have been about a month after that. So I was probably 2 months old along in there with the Lord. And so you not learned a lot in that length of time. But I was learning all I could learn. I'm telling you, I put my feet down and did try to learn. Because I knew He was real from the encounter that I had, and that He wasn't pleased with me. And I thank Him for that encounter. So anyway, this particular Mother's Day, we went to church, and I was already hurt. The boys had been unruly as usual. That was a daily thing at that time. And so anyway, the pastor had got up front, and he called the mothers all up. Everybody that had children, come on up. And I felt like crying before I ever even got to church, and because of what was going on and my discouragement and disappointment, in the children and in life. And so anyway, he lined us all up there, and of course you know what that's like. You think they're looking at nobody but you. And so one of my boys was really in rebellion at that time, and had actually been a really good, easy-to-raise child. But the devil saw, like we shared a while ago with me and Tommy, the devil saw who God wanted him when he got filled in the Spirit. And when he did, he was recognized by Satan then, because Satan is a spirit. And I didn't know all that. And so he almost immediately went into rebellion. And I didn't know what to do with it. I thought, well, what on earth? And it was the fact that he knew who God wanted him to be and everything. So he was trying to get him in another way. And it did affect his life. Well, anyway, he brought that one up that was in, and wanted to, he picked out the son to come up and stand in front of the mother, and then finally had him. And you can imagine, I had another boy that was just as sweet as he could be at that time. He hadn't reached that stage yet, and but he didn't pick that one. And I think, well, I know it was the Lord that caused him to pick that particular one. And anyway, what I wanted to share with you today, because I want you to begin to feel the same way by some of your children. And your children are being raised in a harder time than my children were. I mean, it's not good. I don't know how they make it. God doesn't even expect us to make it in some of the situations that they've got to go through, because He tells us to come out from among them. And I personally did put my kids, after I knew enough to, put them in a Christian school, and from that, homeschooled them the rest of the time. And I'm going to tell you, some kids have made it, and some of my kids have, by putting their children in the public schools, but we have no idea what they're going through. We have some idea, but it's hard. So anyway, there all of us mothers stand across the front of the church, and a son in front of them. Well, then he had the sons to lay their hands on and pray for their mothers. And so this particular boy laid his hands on me, and I don't remember all that he prayed, but I do remember the thing. And he prayed, Lord, show my mother how much you love her, and show her how much I love her too. And I thought, how can he act like he acts and treat me like he's treating me? And I didn't realize that he needed help. And somehow or another, I wasn't giving him that help. Well, anyway, we went home. Dad laid down on the couch, and I had no flour. A lot of the mothers in that day, the dads bought them flowers, and they wore it to church. I didn't have no flour, and Dad didn't even know to do it. He was too young in the Lord. And besides that, they would have took money from meals at that time. And so we went home. He laid down on the couch, and that was the way he was trained at home, that he didn't help, with the housework and the kids or the meals. And he went to work and made a paycheck and come home, and that was his job. Well done. And he did that. and everything. Well, he laid down on the couch and said, "Babe, when you get dinner ready, give me a call." Well, that kind of hurt me, because not at him really, because we wouldn't have took the money. I wouldn't have either, and spent it to buy anything, not even dollar sandwiches, At that time we wouldn't have, so it wasn't hurt at him, but just hurt in life. Well, anyway, I got dinner ready, cleaned up the mess, and took me a lawn chair and took the boys down to the city park in Harrisburg to play, because I could turn them loose and let them run and play, and I could talk to the Lord. Well, I laid there on that Chase lounge, and I told the Lord I went through everything from the first, through school, the first marriage, and everything that had happened during that time, and all the time I'm working a full-time job. My house was clean all the time. I run the vacuum sweeper, because I was raised that way, 2 or 3 times sometimes a day, because of the children, that I had and the mess that I had made, and stuff like that. Laundry was done, lunches for school. I was on-the-job mother. And if anything that I was, and it was Mother's Day, it was a mother. It was a priority in my life. And clothes were clean, laundry was done, and I wouldn't have had it no other way. Well, anyway, that was what my life was at that time, and then worked a 40-hour-a-week job. And so anyway, I was laying there and actually murmuring and complaining to the Lord. And He let me do that. He listened to all of it. But when I got done, He said something that was shocking to me. And this is basically why, 2 things of why. Your children have need. When they're being rebellious, there's something unmet or something that you and him both don't know in their life. And I didn't. I'm just now learning some things, even with my grandchildren, how I could have done a better job with my children, because I wasn't taught to be a mother, other than the mentorship that Mom did, and she just worked from daylight to dark and never murmured, never complained, but I was. And and God don't like murmuring and complaining, and He don't like a pity party either. So when I got done, I heard Him say, "If all of this is true, why are you so miserable?" And it shocked me, and I thought, well, Lord, are you saying that all this is not true? And I thought, if I'm reading the Word right, what little bit I know, you see it all. And so you know what kind of a life I've had. And Lord, I've worked hard. If there's anybody that's worked hard, it's been me. And I've worked hard, but here's the problem. And I don't deserve that. I don't deserve this kind of a life. I'd made straight A's myself, was valedictorian, as far as I know, I got every award for every class I was in. I didn't get every award because there was classes I wasn't in, but I think I got the award for every class that I was in. And everything. Matter of fact, they don't even do it now, so that shows you how valuable that was. But my older brother said the superintendent of schools told him, this was 17 years later, that nobody had ever beat my record in shorthand in 17 years. So, I was not the town clown. And I'd really put myself into all that I was doing. And so I thought, I just didn't give it any other thought that my kids wouldn't do the same thing, but they didn't. Different generation, different influence in the world, different influence in the school systems, and lack of training, lack of knowledge on my part of how to properly train children, and all kinds of reasons. But anyway, I was going at the Lord and telling him, somebody else, I might have to take ours and try to persuade them to believe me, but Father, you know. If anybody knows, you know. And his answer to me was, my son left his throne in glory and came to earth and served people just like your husband, just like your children. He came to seek and to save that which was lost. He became a servant even to the people who didn't deserve it, and for sure, he didn't deserve it. Oh my, I sat there and I bawled and squalled and bawled and squalled, and I thought, I didn't want to do it. I'd already been born again, and I'd already told the Lord I would do whatever He wanted me to do. If I could figure out what He wanted me to do, I would do that. And so basically what He was saying to me is pretty much, you're going to have to do the same thing with your family that He did, that Jesus did with God's family. And if He hadn't have done it, I myself would have had no salvation. So what He was saying is the salvation of my husband and sons would be remarkably influenced by how I served my family, and that they would be drawn. And I'm going to share a little bit of that right now. Looks like I have time to, but I had not opened the same doors in my sinful life that my husband had, that Dad had, I call him. And he had opened some doors that a lot of men bring into their marriages. First of all, his sister was a lot older than him, so he was basically raised as an only child. He had an excellent mother who fixed the 3 meals a day, just as us kids did have. And so she would get up and fix and fry chicken of a morning and put in his lunch bucket. I did that for a long time even, to put in Bob, plus all the other that I had to do, the lunches to pack and stuff like that. But anyway, so all that was normal. Bob had some areas in his life that he was going to have to close. Now, when I had that encounter with the Lord, I mean to tell you, 3 weeks later, I was born again. And with Bob, it took a while. I've thought back and prayed, and actually, and people are going to disagree with me on this, but it's the truth. I'll say this, the manifestations of a born-again spirit did not come with Bob for basically a year. Now, he did all the proverbial, forgive me for this, forgive me for that, but there are doors he had opened that he did have to close. And I really feel like that he spent the better part of a year repenting. Now, God's hand was on his life, and the first thing that the Lord told me was that not to look at him, for me to start working on me, and that He would take care of Bob. And to tell you the truth, even though it didn't show outwardly, and even though I was quote-unquote doing all the religious things I was supposed to do, I had a lot of areas in my life that had to be corrected. So no doubt the Lord's smart, and He told me exactly what I did need to hear. So, but Bob struggled, but I didn't put my mind too much on that. Now, one thing that I appreciate that Bob did when he had problems, he would come to me and he'd say, "Babe, I cannot believe this. You won't believe the dream I had last night. I dreamed things that in my worst days, I didn't do that." Well, there again, wasn't that a strategy of the enemy trying to make him feel like he's possibly still wasn't forgiven, and he didn't have victory in those areas yet. He had some walls that he had to tear down and everything. And so he wasn't able at that time to receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Now, he did go through the water baptism, but we didn't even know at that time what happened to us in the water baptism and the power that actually comes from that water baptism. This was early on, and so I'm saying this to encourage you guys and girls, and not to give up. You've got a learning process to go through, and I'm telling you right now, God will walk through every step of it with you. If you won't give up, if you won't be rebellious about it. And one thing I liked, I'll tell his testimony on this, is he wanted to quit smoking, and because he couldn't see Jesus sitting at the altar and coming and fellowshipping him with a cigarette in his mouth. And so he wanted to quit smoking. And I'll tell you how he did it. He didn't try to hide it. He put a pack of cigarettes in his pocket, which he always did, and he wouldn't tell himself that he couldn't smoke. He'd tell himself he could smoke. I can smoke anytime I want to. And but because he loved the Lord, he didn't want to, but he had to get deliverance. And so he carried that pack of cigarettes, and I think it only took him 3 weeks. And he wouldn't smoke one till he just felt like he had to. Then he'd smoke that one, smoke no more than he had to, and throw it away. And I know there's a lot of people want to beat that habit. I've got sons that want to beat that habit for their own self and for their health, and also just to please the Lord. Anything you can give up, because at that time, I'm telling you what, we had not decided to be born again so He'd give us this and give us that, and we hadn't done it for selfish reasons. We knew we were sinners and was not pleasing to the Lord, and we had a journey of becoming conformed to the image of His dear Son. So if we thought it didn't conform or wasn't compatible to the image of Jesus, then I'm telling you what, we fought it till He took it from us. We fought it with His power. It wasn't behavioral modification, but the enemy can have some really strongholds in our lives, and can keep us in those because of the lack of knowledge, again, in our lives. So anyway, that was his decision on that, and he had some more things and of course I did too, and I'll be sharing some of them as we go along. Just shared that one today. But what I wanted to share today and to really make known to you was that I don't know if I should say it like this or not. A lot of us in our minds try to wear the princess shirt, and particularly the girls. Their mama has told them and how pretty they are, and my mom taught me pretty is as pretty does. So I never gave 15 minutes thought in my life to how pretty I was. Now, clean and neat and responsible and disciplined and prudent and all those things were virtues that our mother did put in us, and she mentored that. She didn't tell us one thing and she did another. I could tell you my mom's story, and at that time we didn't have central air or central heat, and I've seen my mom get up a lot of times. She'd heat the whole house up, and we had a nice home. And the neck of the old warm morning stove would be red, and she would fire up they was already fired up in the winter, but the fireplaces in the living room and in the bedroom, and heat the whole house up and everything. Then she'd stay up and bank them down after we went to bed and everything. But through the night, it would really get cold again, and they heated with coal. And she'd go out in the coal bin on the porch outside and start that same process over again. Fire up that warm morning and get the neck of that warm morning red, and fire up the two fireplaces, get that house warm again. I never heard my mother not one time gripe. And I really believe that that's why us three kids is where we're at in the Lord today. My mother worked hard. The house was clean. I never mowed a lawn, and thinking back, some things we're thinking back now even. Daddy had to mow the lawn while we were at school, no doubt, with the old-fashioned push-mower kind. Never heard him gripe. Made a big, huge garden. Mom and Aunt Grela, that'd be Marshall Glover's and Terry and Franklin's mother, the two of them would do their laundry together in the old-fashioned kind of laundry, not the kind that we have now and everything. Uncle H, their dad, was blind, and he would sit by the hour and wash the canning jars to can. And I said to him one time, Uncle H, how do you know, since you can't see, how do you know that the jars are clean? He said, well, hon, I can feel if they're clean. And so, I mean, that's the generation that I was raised in. So actually, us kids didn't know any better. And it was wonderful, actually, because I'm going to tell you what, I never to this day bought the princess shirt, I'll say that. And it's not right. We got the things that we needed to help us to make it in this generation, and God's been good to us and everything. But that's kind of the way that I was raised, and not a bad way. Now, my mother never gave the opinion that she didn't deserve to have to do any of those things. And I'm telling you, meals was on the table, lunches were packed. Now, she didn't work out of the home very much. She did some. When pictures would come due and this and that would come, we'd need extra money because Daddy was retired at that time. Then there was jobs that she did do. But anyway, if anybody had the right to murmur, complain, and think that they were doing things that they were too good to do. That, I don't think that ever entered in my mind. Now, a woman my age, evidently, I don't know if she had a mother that way, but anyway, her and her husband, Bob and I had a place at Harrisburg Lake. And it was nice. We remodeled an older trailer, but it was cute as a trick. Well, they brought their camper down and spent a week with us. And I'm telling you, it was a week of revival, because she was truly born again of the Spirit, filled in the Holy Ghost, and they lived it. But she shared with me that when I was home, we had a TV, but nobody touched it. It was Daddy's TV. And about the only thing that he watched on there, he did watch Oral Roberts, because years ago when Oral Roberts first came on TV, I can remember hearing him say that Jesus is alive. He's here. He's real. He's in the now. And I thought, I wonder what he means by that. But anyway, and evidently they had soap operas and all that back then, because this woman I'm telling you about, I won't call her name because I'm in relationship with her children, so they would know her. But she told me, after being born again of the Spirit and filled in the Holy Ghost, she backslid, because they lived on a farm, and she drove a tractor for her husband. And when she'd watched the soap operas, they had on long, pretty dresses and hair all fixed, and generally had a drink in their hand. And she got that in her spirit so much that she went into a severe bout of depression and almost divorced her good husband. So I'm telling you, the world influences us. And but what does God want you to do? Go back to the Word and His teachings, and we are to serve our families and to do it gladly. If you've got children at home, I'm going to tell you right now, your main job is not a ministry. Some will leave their ministry or leave their home and go on a ministry. That could happen. I'm not going to try to be God in that, but I'm telling you right now, we've got our job at home, particularly. Now, once those kids are out of their diapers, and if they're in school and you've got all day, that's a whole nother story. So, anyway, that's as much as I have time for today. So, that's some testimonies I wanted to share. Hopefully it'll help